Hi, I'm Kira O'Doy, and today I'm going to be going into depth and talking about a really cool podcast I got the opportunity to listen to. This is my preview review video presentation. I'm the period one. I listen to the Unsolved Murders True Crime Stories podcast. The host of the show are the highly talented Wendy Mackenzie and Carter Roy. The podcast is produced by the Parcast Network, and there's new episodes every Tuesday. I chose it because the description said it had an ensemble of actors in it, which really intrigued me. As an actor myself, I thought it'd be really cool to see what it was about. I also chose the podcast because I like to read as a hobby and didn't really want to turn something I really enjoy, like reading, into homework. So, the basic format of the podcast is a content warning, followed by a little skit introduction of what might have happened at the crime scene. Following is an introduction of the crime, then a background on the victim or the first victim of the case, then key suspects, a timeline, and key evidence of the crime, and lastly, a conclusion on who the hosts think committed the crime. Since they are unsolved, they've come up with theories. I think people who don't necessarily like reading or sitting down to read a book would really enjoy this podcast because it's entertaining and you don't have to read it yourself. I even turn it on the way to school. In the show, they also not only review the case, but they also act things out, which I think makes it even more interactive and engaging. And that's particularly why I enjoyed the podcast. To get a full understanding of the podcast, I'm going to act out a scene.
The grand opening of the Flamingo Hotel was scheduled for December 26th, 1946.
While the Havana Conference was still going on.
Also still going on? Construction on the hotel.
Are we ready, Ben?
Don't worry, Mo. It's all gonna come together.
But they're still working on the rooms.
Relax. Just a few kinks to work out. It's gonna be fantastic.
December 26th arrived.
And was the hotel ready?
No, but that didn't stop Bugsy Siegel.
Ben, can we push the grand opening back? There are drop claws in the lobby.
We've been promising this for months. Let's give Las Vegas a spectacle like it's never seen before.
But what about the rooms?
We'll just keep people up all night in the casino. If we do our job right, nobody will want to leave the party.
Thank you. That's from one of my favorite episodes, The Bugsy Siegel Case, about a famous American mobster who opened one of the first casinos in Las Vegas. He tragically was gunned down in his lover's apartment, and the case was never solved. Strengths I saw in the podcast are it grabs people's attention. It's super engaging. It has this acting out. It has intense music. It has sound effects. It has good sound mixing. I also found the podcast very creative. It simply just wasn't listing off crimes. I also liked how mobile you could be within the podcast because the podcast was put into different labeled episodes, so you wouldn't necessarily have to start from the beginning to understand the rest of the podcast. I also found the hosts very entertaining. They're quite funny and they have a really good relationship. I also like the mystery aspect of the podcast, that all the crimes were unsolved. I also enjoyed how accessible the podcast was in the way that you could watch it on Spotify for free and with premium. And my last strength for it was really bingeable. I am almost on episode 50, so I found that really enjoyable. However, some weaknesses I saw with the podcast are the episodes are super long, almost an hour long for some, and they span multiple episodes. Some episodes can amount to almost 2 hours together, and I feel like that might be hard for some people to listen to, but if you're just listening to the podcast as you go on with your day, I feel like that's manageable. Another weakness I saw was the podcast is very graphic, so much that they give a content warning. I find that not accessible. And my last weakness would be that there's no visuals. I understand that it's a podcast, but I find things that are truly, truly engaging have good speech, good dialogue, but then also visuals to really engage an audience. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.